Morning, all. All right, starting off with something a little different today. In that we're getting close to New Year's. That gap between Christmas and New Year's, being as it is, and all that. It's not quite 2025, and we're still having that hangover from Christmas and all that, right? Although I will say that the traffic to the channel during Christmas week has been far higher than I've ever seen it before. So that's been kind of an interesting twist on things. So I wanted to talk about things that I've been getting asked about in interviews lately, and I know when we went to the YouTube creator thing in Vancouver, there were some questions I was getting from people, and I thought, okay, there's enough people that may not know why I do some of the things that I do on this channel as I do them, and so yeah, I could do a video like this. I used to do these a lot back in the early days of the channel, trying to explain, okay, here's what I do and why. So this is kind of a throwback as well as just a look towards the future. So I'll start with the whiteboards themselves, because that's the number one thing, especially in the entertainment guy. When I'm catching tourists coming through who don't know what I do and why, a lot of, oh, look at the old man with the whiteboard. Upgrade. Get computer graphics. Get a green screen. It's so old school. Yeah, it is old school, and I actually like old school. I don't have a problem with the whiteboards, and they are for me more than anything else. So in the beginning, way back when, so I started out just talking on a couch to the camera. That's all it was. There was no whiteboards. There was no anything. It was just me yammering at a camera. And then I realized, I meant to mention this in that video. I forgot. I meant to mention this in that video. Forgot. So I started doing cue cards, and then the cue cards were being picked up on by other YouTube channels as well. So I decided, all right, I will upgrade from cue cards to using whiteboards. And that's what it was. The reviews, the previews, and all that all evolved organically as well after I got the whiteboards going. And the review videos that you see on this channel now are really how it evolved to be. So when I see people saying, don't do it like this, do it like this, it doesn't make any sense to do this the way you're doing this. It evolved that way. I'm not going to change it. Again, I do like how the previews and reviews work at this point. We'll talk about the previews again, but the boards themselves, I consider it to be kind of a unique thing. And people are, if I'm out in the wild, people are like, oh, you don't bring your whiteboard with you when you go out in public? No. So it is definitely a big part of the channel. And when I go on vacation and I bring a small whiteboard with me, people always like, wow, he brings the whiteboard with him on vacation. Well, why wouldn't I? I do get asked about that going through the airport. There are times I've learned that when I'm bringing the magnets with me, to put them in the check luggage, because they ask way too many questions about why you need so many magnets in your carry-on. So I just throw that in the check bag now, which means they still go through it. There was actually at one point we were traveling, and I actually put with the magnets, "Hi TSA, I use these magnets for my work. I know it's weird. Thanks for looking at my stuff." That was the one time they didn't open it up. That was one time they didn't open it up. I'm wondering if the X-ray told them. Maybe they used the X-ray and they could see the piece of paper and what was said on it. But yeah, the boards are kind of my thing, and so the idea, well, do what everybody else is doing, and then take away anything that feels unique, or and it would add more time, and I'll talk about that too. So the no highlights thing, I think, is self-explanatory, because there's copyright and it's a thing. Uh, the one channel that I watch that does reviews, I watch What Culture Wrestling, and I watch Simon Miller's Ups and Downs for Raw, for Dynamite, for SmackDown every week, because I don't have time to watch wrestling every week. I wish I did, but I don't. And they don't use highlights either. Now, they do have a green screen, and they do use, like, little cutouts, like the little screenshots of what happened during the show. They don't use highlights because WWE is terrible, and the NHL can be quite brutal about highlights as well. Yes, there's fair use and there's all of that, but while you're arguing with them about what is or isn't fair use, they're taking the money for your video. So I don't use highlights. I don't feel like it's worth the hassle of dealing with the NHL on copyright. That was something I learned many years ago, and so I generally do not have anything on the channel that I think is going to cause any kind of issue with the National Hockey League. And I did go over it with the NHL at one point as well. So there you go. And they were quite clear that we own all footage, and if you use it, we could shut the channel down. So that's important. The one take aspect. So I know that a lot of YouTubers, there's a lot of cuts. There's a lot of cuts during their videos, and they do a bunch of takes. I can't do that. I can't. Like I guess I could do 3 or 4 different takes of something and post it, but it just doesn't feel right to me. And a lot of the channels that I follow, they may not necessarily do just one take, but they edit things together where it flows together like one take. And I've never been a huge fan of some of the jump cuts and some of the multi takes. So I prefer one take. And if I screw up 10 minutes into a video, I got to start over. And I just take a deep breath and go, all right, well, I got to start over. And if I'm 10 minutes into a video twice and I got to start over, that's where I'm going to leave the room. I'm going to, have myself a soda, because I do not drink. And I do see those comments of, I think he's been drinking. Because anytime that there's any joy on the internet, somebody has to be intoxicated. Because joy, happiness, sense of humor, that has to be alcohol. Because there's no reason for people to be happy anymore. But yeah, one take is the important way for me to do it. And yes, sometimes I need to take a moment, and sometimes I abandon a video. There have been times where I get partway through and nope, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is not a video that I'm going to be able to do today. And so I gotta, take that board and either put it aside, set up a different one with different notes, or just I give it up altogether. I erase the board and start over. What would I add? And this is something I get asked often. If I could do interviews with people, I think that'd be great. But it's got to be the kind of interviews that I would do. So it likely wouldn't be exactly the same as what everybody else is doing. I might not ask the kind of questions people are necessarily all that interested in. I'd be asking things I'm interested to know, which might be interesting to people, might not. But yeah, I would love, and I don't just mean like hockey players. I mean like anybody around the hockey world, and just have chats with them, and try to make sure that when I'm interviewing people and I'm asking them questions, I'm not going to ask them anything that gets them in trouble later. So I would make sure that if I was doing interviews, that it wasn't the kind of thing where they say something and they go, "Oh, I'm going to lose my job," and I go, "Ha, I'm posting it anyways," because clicks, people. No, the multi-day previews when I started them out. Uh, there was definitely some pushback on me doing more than one day of hockey previews, but it's worked really well. It's worked really well in that the previews last year, I noticed that there were times where it'd get like 1,500 to 2,000 views on certain ones, which when you're dealing with the YouTube numbers, that's really low, and so it tells the algorithm, or all the systems that are in place on YouTube, hey, this channel's putting out crap right now. Look at this. Nobody's watching this. And it feels like it hurts the other videos that day. And I was starting to notice that a lot last year. That when I did a preview for, say, 4 games and put that out there, if I did a preview for 12 games, 15 games, it didn't do a lot better. The previews just did not work. They were actually, I thought, hurting the numbers on the channel. And what I've seen this season is I was probably accurate in that assessment. And I've talked about that, and I've had people saying, hey, don't talk about your numbers and how, what generates revenue and don't, because we don't want to hear about it from YouTubers. And so I've stopped talking about it. I've just started getting selective in which videos that I'm doing, which series I'm continuing, and all of that, because, again, it's for the health of the channel and for what people are telling me they want to watch. I will go in the direction of the views. Which brings me into the World Juniors side of it. I mentioned this the other day, and I had people arguing with me. No. The World Juniors would be a huge draw. They're not. The World Juniors is a fun tournament, and it's got a very strong core audience. Absolutely. But when I've done videos on the channel that are just strictly about the World Juniors, I've been surprised at how poorly they've done. Unless it's the gold medal game. And even then, it kind of has to be a win for Canada or the USA, or else it doesn't do as well. And this is just what I've noticed over the last 8 years, is that when I talk about World Juniors, the numbers are really low. And so I throw that into news videos. It's not that I ignore the World Juniors, but to watch an entire game, review it and all that, it ends up not being something that makes a lot of sense. The one exception would have been when there wasn't an NHL in December and January, and we watched World Juniors, and it did well because everybody was really clamoring for some hockey at that point. And coverage of other leagues, I am fine with covering other leagues. I've done SPHL videos. You know, I've done AHL videos. I've talked about the ECHL, but it has to be in not in large doses. I've found that you get that pop initially where people are like, hey, he's covering this is great, and then if you continue that those numbers will just drops off. So the NHL's the draw, the NHL's the big league, and I understand that there are some that are of the mind that, well, he has to cover all of it because he's called the hockey guy. But the name The Hockey Guy was just one that I gave the channel as it was starting out, with like, all right, here's a placeholder name, The Hockey Guy. I'll that's the placeholder name, and it's done quite well. So obviously, I'm not going to change the name of the channel when it's doing really really well. You sort of leave that alone. I've seen some channels change their branding when they get big, and it usually goes very very poorly. Sort of like when your channel gets big and you start adding extra hosts or changing out the hosts. It's not a great idea, which is part of the reason why, as the channel was growing initially, I was like, sure, I could have a group of people that I'm working with on this, but it's become obvious to me as the channel's grown that it's better if it's, me doing the videos, and my wife helps a lot with the behind the scenes stuff you don't necessarily see on camera and everything, and just leave it at that. There hasn't really been the need for me to bring anybody else in, like a video editor. I've toyed with the idea of hiring a video editor at points, but I've never really been able to find a justification that works. I do feel like that, like for instance, last night, the review for last night's games was posted to the channel within 10 minutes of the last game being finished. At least it was around 10 minutes because of how I staggered out the pausing of said review, which I was very scatterbrained in and I apologize for. But it I think it's better to have it out sooner rather than later. And yeah, I mean, they can add all these, bells and whistles and pretty it up and everything. But I like to have it done and to be able to go to bed at a reasonable hour. Last night's the earliest I've been done on a Saturday during the regular season, I think, ever. The efficiency this year on my end has been, I think, better than it has been in seasons previous. I also haven't gotten nearly as annoyed as I do in seasons previous, which is throwing me off because when I look at how many games teams have played this year compared to previous years, it's been busier. Teams have played more games than they had at this point in the calendar year last year because they have to make up for that extra long break for the Four Nations tournament. So yeah, I guess I just now have a system that really works. My stress level has dropped way off, and I feel much better about things. So the plan for 2025, it doesn't seem like it would make much sense for me to do this towards the end of December and not talk about 2025. Now, obviously, we do 2 trips a year. In February, we travel with our kids, and then in August, we travel by ourselves. So we allow ourselves the 2 weeks. Most people have 2 weeks off during any given year. I don't really have the weeks off per se because I do a bunch of extra videos before I go on vacation that post to the channel while I'm on vacation. And while I'm on vacation, I'm still making videos. So there's that. More for the entertainment guy than for the hockey guy, but I'm still making videos. And since we'll be going down during the Four Nations tournament, I will still be watching and reviewing the Four Nations. And I will still be doing my best to keep up on everything around the hockey world and post news videos too. But I will still be pre-recording a bunch of videos before we go down there that post while we're down there. Now, the meetups, because I get asked about this too, will likely start again in May. During the regular season, there have been points where I've said, hey, maybe we could have a meetup on, and I look at the date that I'm looking at, and either it's going to pour rain, it's going to be really windy, or the date that I'm thinking maybe that day ends up actually being really busy in the NHL, so it doesn't work. So the street hockey meetups will start again in May. I would like to have one while we're down in Anaheim in February. I have not emailed my contact with the Ducks yet about that. We do know what day we're going to have available to do that, and I think that would be a lot of fun. And then I kind of have to plan that around Four Nations too. So the timing of that game the street hockey game is going to be determined by where the Four Nations, when the Four Nations games are and all that fun stuff. And then August, we haven't really decided much on August. The decision seems to be one of Disneyland is a relatively easy one for us, being on the West Coast and all that. Las Vegas, we have not been to Las Vegas now in we're going on to 2 years now since we've gone to Las Vegas. And so it would be fun to go back to Las Vegas. The third place we're looking at the possibility of going to would be Orlando/Disney World. So that's an option as well that we're entertaining. But that's the plan. And I've got likely because you just never know what can happen between now and August. And that's part of the reason why I'm enjoying doing trips. I never traveled once in my life until this channel existed. I never had a trip. I lived in Chilliwack from the mid 70s until I met my wife. So that's well, the channel was going at that point. I met her in 2016 and our first trip was in 2018. So it was a while. So 2018, so I was 45 when I started traveling. Up until then, I had never traveled. I had never gone anywhere other than like going on a bus to Edmonton for a Rammstein concert in 2011. Does that count? We were there for a day and a half, and then we were right back on the bus and coming back. We spent more time on the bus than we spent in Edmonton, I swear. At least being awake in Edmonton, because it was a 17-hour bus ride up, and I think it was an 18-and-a-half-hour bus ride coming back, something along those lines. It was ridiculous. But it was Rammstein, so we did that. So that's as close to a vacation as I got up until the channel and all that. So I think it's great. And then of course 2020, nobody was traveling that year. 2021, nobody was traveling that year. So we've been doing the traveling we can while we can. You never know what's going to happen. You never know. There's any number of things that can change your ability to travel and your ability to enjoy everything. And hey, I think it's great to be able to travel and meet subscribers. It is still weird to me that I can be in Disneyland and headed for Pirates of the Caribbean and somebody go, "Hey, it's the hockey guy. How are you doing?" And great, awesome. It's always weird to me, but wherever we go, I usually get that greeting, and I think that's fantastic. So, people will get a chance to see me in the wild in February, as well as likely in August, and then meetups I would think start in May, and likely in May because I have to wait until the playoffs are, getting to the point where there's days off here and there, and we're not looking at just matinee games on Saturday and Sunday because it really messes up my ability to have a meetup on a Saturday or a Sunday. So that's where that is right now, and that's the whole plan for 2025 for me personally. That's it. Make sure I got my trips figured out. And then that the the meetups I need to make sure are basically almost every other week starting in May. That's the hope, is every other week. Yeah, I really enjoy that I can go out and play street hockey. I can play for about 3 hours, and when everybody else is tired and guys less than half my age are like, "I'm done, I gotta go home," I still have energy. So I think that's kind of fun. And I'm very happy about that. So that's why I use the treadmill 5 times a week, which eats up a lot of my day. The treadmill takes about 50 to 55 minutes. And then, of course, you're going to have to cool down and have a shower after. It ends up being about an hour and a half altogether out of my day every day. But it's clearly had its benefits. It has clearly had its benefits. So as much as I have days that I'm like, I'd really rather not, it has definitely had its benefits. It really has. So I'm very grateful for that. And then one thing that I get asked about, and I figured I would close on this, is why daily videos? Most YouTubers, especially you'll notice in January, YouTubers kind of are gone. They're like, I'm going to take a week off because ad rates are at their lowest of the year. The first 2 weeks of January, ad rates are very low. Now, this year, that might be different. It feels like they've kind of taken the ad rates that are normally very high in November and kind of spread them out further into the year. But I know there's going to be that drop off in January, and that's why YouTubers are kind of gone. But I still post daily. Part of it is because back in 2014, when I went through my own personal turmoil, for lack of a better way of putting it, that having YouTubers that posted regularly was great. That I would come home, I'd be kind of in a down mood, and I could throw on YouTube videos that I had been enjoying for years, and that those YouTubers producing regularly and their channels being a part of my life, that was important. Now, the interesting part is that most of those channels are gone now. Most of those channels, those creators have moved on. They don't make videos anymore, but they were really important during that time of my life. And I understand from having met subscribers in person, especially, that there are people that rely on those daily videos. That when I don't produce a video before about 2 or 3 o'clock my time, Yvonne starts getting messages. Is Shannon okay? What's going on? What's happening down there? Why isn't the feed of videos from the Hockey Guy polluting my feed of subscribed videos? So I will always produce daily videos for as long as I'm physically capable, because there are people who rely on them. It is not strictly a money deal for me. Now, obviously, this is my primary source of income. I get some income here and there from the stuff sold on Teespring via the channel here, and I do make some money on Cameo. My books have started making a little bit of money on Amazon, but I don't really push them and promote them, and I probably should, because I know that's a decent way to add a little bit to your income as well. But the daily videos are always going to be a staple for me. I think that's really important. And if there's a day or a week that I'm going to have trouble producing videos, I will pre-produce videos. It's part of the reason why you haven't seen career videos for a while. I'm holding on to career videos until we're going to be going on our trip, and then you're going to get career videos while we're on our trip. And a bunch of other stuff too. The interesting thing is that the break for Four Nations is far longer than what we get with the All-Star break. So even when we get back from our vacation, I'm going to have time to do a lot more. I've seen people asking too when I'm going to finish the jersey collection videos. The first jersey collection video, where I talked about the Western Conference from Anaheim to Minnesota, looking at the viewing numbers and comparing it with everything else, I've decided to hold off a bit on those. I've still got the rack in here for when I do decide to finish that up, but I'm not restricting that to over the next few days, because the amount of time that first one took was a lot. It was a little over 2 hours for me personally. The actual video itself is 1 hour and 22 minutes. And so I want to make sure that when I do go back and finish all of that out, that I'm strategic about it. I'm putting it in the exact right place for those videos to go. But that's something that I do now that I don't think I did back in 2016 or 2017. I never really had a plan for which videos I was going to make when. I was just, all right, now I'm going to do these. I've also had a whole series that I've wanted to start, like a team history series, which now I realize is probably better suited for the off season. So it's going to be similar to what I've done with team histories before, but approached from a bit of a different angle. So that's the plan there. And yeah, just seeing the numbers on the channel, looking at, for instance, last summer I did the year by year look at the NHL's history. That is the second and final time I'll make that series. But yeah, I've been doing my best to be a little bit strategic with which videos I make when. And, looking at the overall numbers, it looks like since I've started employing it that way and just not talking about on the channel about any numbers of any sort with that the channel's done better. So, and it definitely helps that we've had some trades and we've had some coaches change hands. We've had some players change hands and we've had some coaches getting fired, and so it's definitely caused some more interest recently in the National Hockey League in general than where it was throughout the first couple of months of the season. But at this point, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. I would like to thank everybody for watching this year, for watching in previous years, and for helping with the channel growth. Without you guys out there helping the channel with that growth, without you guys watching my videos, it'd be kind of silly for me to be in here doing them. I would still be making daily hockey videos. Even if the channel had never blown up, I would still be making daily hockey videos because it's kind of my favorite thing to talk about. that usually people in my normal, regular life may not be so happy about. I did actually have a chat on Christmas with my ex about that, where she had a laugh out of that. That she was always tired of how much I talked about hockey. It drove her insane. And now that's my job. And I told her, I said, the weird thing is when I'm not on the set and I'm not covering hockey, I don't talk about hockey as much as I used to. So it is just kind of a weird existence I have now, but I'm very grateful for it. And I'm very grateful for you guys being out there to watch. So hopefully this answers questions people have had. And if you're asking any questions about where I buy stuff and stuff like that, all my markers come from Amazon. The whiteboards are all Viz Pro. They come from Amazon. I've gone through multiple different whiteboard producers. Viz Pro, for me, are the best. Expo are usually, with the bigger markers, Expo are the better ones. With the smaller markers, I actually prefer the Volcanics. So it's an orange Volcanics. This is the one that drives people crazy, is the orange, but I can read it. And that's the other thing with the boards. They're there for me. They're there so I can read it. I will read every line on all of it. So when I see people going, I can't believe nobody can read that. I read the whole board when I do reviews. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thank you guys for everything throughout this year and into next year as well. I will talk to you again soon.